being mysterious is great. What isn't great is when you date and they go, you've not posted on your social media for a year. What do you look like? I very quickly became very aware and also really sick of the virtual scorecard that people were kind of having with me and my ex, and I think it's unfair. I'm gonna grieve this chapter of my life. Where am I looking? Where are you telling me to look to find myself? Because I don't know. This happened to me. I was really grieving, and then all of a sudden information started churning out, and I was like, okay, I'm really angry now. One of the guys I used to work with once said to me, time always goes forward, Lou. Time never goes back. You never ever go back. You have to start putting one foot in front of the other because time is just going forward. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. I'm gonna have to apologise now because, well, it's not doing it at the moment, but my neighbours are having some work done. This is literally the reality of having a studio that you built in your house when it's not actually a studio, it's just your office, and people are having work done outside. It's kind of like when my neighbour cuts his grass, God love him, and to be fair, he cuts the lawn in the front of my house as well, so I can't actually complain. But sometimes my mic, I think I've said in the past, is so sensitive. It picks up on absolutely everything, and there's like drilling going on down the road, so I'm really sorry if you can pick that up. I'm going to, fingers crossed, hopefully edit it out. But I just wanted to say that now, just in case you think, oh my God, Lou, what is going on in the background? It would be the fact that my neighbours are having lots of work done. Anyway, welcome back. I hope we're all okay. I have had so many messages to do an episode on, well, actually, that's a lie. I've had so many messages about talking about being single, and can I talk on being single a bit more. And I have tried to keep all my breakup stuff for the first half of this year. Now we're getting into the second half of this year. It was a plan of mine to bring in more single content, but I wanted to get to a point where I knew what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to know what I wanted to address, what I didn't want to address. And these things take a lot of planning. Like planning a podcast episode takes a lot of work. And like today's episode, I've got bullet points on my screen that I'm going to be referring back to. But I want to make sure I'm talking about the right things for the right audience, if that makes sense. And enough, I had a message the other day off of a guy who was like, your podcast is saving me at the moment, which is so nice because I like it when my male listeners like reach out to me, and I like it when men message me on Instagram to say that I have helped them, because I'm very girly coded. You know, my brand colours are pink. I'm obviously a girl, and I like the fact that my content still speaks to men. And you know, when I talk about my experience, I started off, and I remember especially the early days of my podcast episodes, I used to say, right, just to let you know, I am in a straight relationship. Like, I've come out of a straight relationship. I am straight. I'm going to talk about men. And I like it that men listen to my podcast and don't feel like I'm getting at men, because it's not all men. And I talk very, very, very fondly of my dad, my brother, and my brother-in-law. I know it's not just men. Like, I know that. And I know that, you know, men struggle with breakups as well. And there are women out there as well that have done what my ex did to me, to men. So I just wanted to start off by saying that if you are a guy listener and you have started listening to my podcast, number one, thank you for getting past the pink and thinking, do you know what, I'm going to give this chick a chance. And number two, please message me. I love hearing from you. I love hearing from everyone that listens to my podcasts. But I love hearing from the guys, because it means that I can screenshot it and put it in a reviews section that I'm going to start doing on my Instagram anyway. And it means that when men fall on my page and think, this is a really girly girl, they'll want to stay as well. And I do try and make sure that my content is inclusive for everybody. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make a little note to, one, shout out my male listeners, and two, just say to you guys, like, I would love for you to get in touch. I know I have a very loyal watcher on YouTube, who is a guy, and his message, when he messaged me, his message literally brought tears to my eyes. And so I love hearing from everybody, and some messages that I get make me incredibly emotional, and I just wanted to extend that out so that you guys feel confident in messaging me and you want to message me. I actually woke up this morning, and whilst I was going through my Patreon DMs and replying to my Patreoners, I actually saw a message from someone saying that they didn't want to comment on my reel because she didn't want her ex to see that she had commented on my reel. And she equally said, like, I really, really, really hope that this message gets to you, because I've messaged people with large followings before, and the message just has never been seen. And so that's why I always say, like, comment on my reels or message me. I pick up every single one of my messages, and if I haven't picked up your message, please re-message me. But I pick up every single one of my messages, and I reply to pretty much everybody that messages me. I always make sure that they get a reply. And that made me feel sad, because I was like, God, I really hope that there's not any more people out there sitting there thinking, oh my God, I would love to speak to her, or I would love to get links or, advice off of her, but I don't want to publicly comment on a reel because then everybody will see it. And I know that the Instagram algorithm is so strange. It's really, and I don't know what Instagram are doing at the moment. And I mean, it wouldn't be me if I wasn't moaning about Instagram, but Instagram are making shareable and reshareable content, and content that people send to each other. That is so heavy on Instagram at the minute. Likes and views have gone out the window. So now we're on content that we can share. And so I think if you are engaging with a video, I see a lot of videos that my friends engage with, and I think, oh my God, have they really liked that? Or have they reshared that? And that's what Instagram wants to show you. And I think I've spoken about this before. I remember, I'm not entirely sure how old my listeners all are, but there was once a time, and I think that Instagram need to bring this back. Every single time I talk about it, I say everyone should petition to bring this back. There was once a time where you could see who's followed who on Instagram. Like, you actually could go on to an activity board and see so-and-so has followed so-and-so. And when you think about it now, like, that feature alone would cause absolute carnage. But when it was actually a live feature, I don't really think we actually sat and thought about what it actually did. Like, you could track people who were following people, and you could also see what they'd liked. And so if you have an ex, and say you're in a relationship still with your ex, and if you had an ex like mine who got double tap happy and was just liking loads of photos on Instagram, you would be able to see that. But now, I mean, I had a gut instinct. And isn't it weird that you can pick out the girl? Out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of followers, or people that are there following, you can pick out the girl. And I also think that Instagram, if they're not going to bring that feature back, they should put people that are following in chronological order. So it should be like the most recent person that they've followed at the top. Because I do genuinely think Instagram has now, one, become this amazing place where people can actually make a solid income out of their knowledge, out of their journey, like me, or, like sharing things online to actually genuinely help people. But I also think it is the root cause of a lot of people's problems in their relationship. I think that people are worried about being seen as being called a psycho or controlling when you are saying, like, I don't like the fact that you have liked someone's Instagram story, or I don't like the fact that you have liked a girl's post. And it was funny because, interestingly, I have a lot of guy friends, And I've got 2 stories on this. I have a lot of guy friends. We were in a bar the other day, and one of my guy mates turned around and was like, God, I like girls' Instagram stories, but it's like, you know, I'd like them if, like, we're friends and, you know, they're in the gym and they look good. And I think, yeah, fair play. Like, I'm going to like that. And I was like, that's totally fine. Like, if they're a friend. But I think the problem comes where, like, in liking Instagram stories, I think is the slyest thing ever if it's not a friend of yours. Like, I didn't give my friend the benefit of the doubt, but like, I actually understood where my guy friend was coming from when he said, like, there's absolutely nothing malicious in it at all. But I think if you don't know the girl, or like you've never really interacted with the girl and she's posting like gym fits and the clothes are revealing and you're just in a relationship liking someone's Instagram story, 2 things on that. 1, why? And 2, the girlfriend or the boyfriend of that person that's liking that post is never going to see that. And I just think it's the slyest thing ever. I think it's one of the most toxic things that Instagram have actually brought out. Don't get me wrong, when I've had a few glasses of wine, if my friends are also out, or if my friends are like posting on Instagram, everybody that posts a story gets a like. Everyone. Like, I can be 3 wines deep and I'm enjoying that. Like, I want to see what your kids are doing. I'm liking it. I want to see what you're eating for dinner that night. I like it. Like, I am a prolific story liker when I've had a few glasses of wine. But I mean, like, with my friends. I think that there's a problem when people are liking Instagram stories, especially if they're in a relationship. And I don't like it. And I always see things on Instagram. This is the second part. I always see things on Instagram that are like, you know, oh, it's just a like. And then there's like, yeah, but that's probably been screenshotted into a group chat. One of my friends is so savage, she'll block them. She'll get rid of them. She's like, I'm not entertaining this. I just think that Instagram has become a problem. And obviously I talk really openly and really honest about how I feel. It never used to bother me, because it was never a problem. My ex used to follow the naked yoga girl and like, you know, Monster Energy girls and girls that like he never would ever come in contact with. And he would like the photos and I'd be like, oh, do you know what? Whatever. But now even I find that disrespectful. Regardless of who they are, like, I just find it disrespectful. And I don't know whether that's because I obviously went through a stage of being sent screenshots, not only from girls that had their picture liked by him, like screenshot like, hey, just to let you know, like, this is going on, like proper girls. And I've also went looking, because obviously if you get sent evidence, you then go looking for it. So like, I actually felt like I was going insane, because I was like checking certain girls' Instagram profiles to see if my ex's name was underneath like the photos. And I do not think girls feel confident enough, and guys, but like girls feel confident enough admitting that they do stuff like that, because they get branded a psycho. But actually what they're doing is confirming their suspicions in their head. And that's what I mean. Like, if you're being sent evidence that your ex, which was your boyfriend at the time, if you are being sent evidence that they are liking photos of girls in bikinis or underwear or whatever, then you are going to have probably more suspicions that like, okay, this is going to happen a lot. And that was my case. Like, that happened to me, and that was what happened to me, and that's why I found quite a lot of photos. But like, you get branded a psycho. No one turns around and goes, mate, like, you shouldn't be doing that, you've got a girlfriend. And I am quite relaxed, and I've always been quite I've always been quite secure. Like, I don't mind saying in front of somebody like, oh yeah, they're good looking, or like, she's good looking, or he's good looking. Or if my partner would say like, oh yeah, like, she's pretty, or she's good looking. It's never really bothered me at all, really, because it's like a comment that they're saying to you. It's not behind closed doors. They're not saying it to them. They're just being honest. And I just think I appreciate people looking good, dressing good, smelling nice. And like, I literally seen one of my friends in the pub on Saturday, and he has dropped about 3 stone. And I was like, oh my God, you look sensational. I was like, you look unreal. And he was like, oh my God, thanks so much. Like I've lost weight, like I've started running. And I was like, you look great. Like, I don't care who you are, what sex you are. If you look good, I'm telling you that you look good. But I think it is a completely different ball game when you are liking girls' photos or liking guys' photos in the hope that your ex would never see. And I don't know whether you guys can agree with this, and you probably are, or probably gonna nod your heads, and I hope you are. You get that classic, I just don't want any trouble from Instagram, I'm just gonna delete the app. If I entered that phrase into my WhatsApp, it's ridiculous how many times that I was told that. I don't want any trouble from Instagram. All Instagram does is cause trouble. No, Instagram's just there. You choose how to use Instagram. And if you're going to use it like that, then probably shouldn't be in a relationship, you know? And I would love to get everyone's views on this, because like I said, I've got guy friends, and it was really nice to have a chat with my friend and say, like, because I was like, no way, like, you do not like girls' Instagram stories. And then when he explained his side, I was like, actually, that's a fair point, just having a bit of a chat about Instagram before I go into the episode. But I think it's really interesting to have these types of conversations, but also to bring up topics of conversations that people don't talk about. Like, people do not talk about this because people are embarrassed. People are embarrassed to say, like, oh yeah, I went down every single girl in his Instagram following list and found what I was looking for. Like, if it pays off, like, you were right. And like I always talk about your brain wanting to like close something off. Your brain is looking for evidence. And if you find that evidence, then fair play. I will openly sit here and say, I did that. And I found the evidence, and when I presented it, I was told that the app was going to be deleted. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that because it's like an interesting conversation to have, and I think like I talk about a lot on this podcast. And I think because I'm a one-man band and obviously don't have somebody here to like bounce off of, I think it's nice to get like the opinions of my listeners almost to have that chat with. So if you want to have that chat with me, then message me by all means. So like I said, I'm going to talk about being single a lot more. I'm going to talk about 3 things today. I'm going to talk about the social death of the future that you had built. And I'm going to talk about loads of different things that I don't think are commonly spoken about online about breakups and being single. I'm going to talk about when your life gets handed back to you and how you cope with that. And I'm also going to talk about when your ex starts living the life that you had planned. So talk about 3 things today. It's going to be a really good episode. I'm very excited for it. Like I said at the start, I've got lots of bullet pointed notes that I want to talk about. My eyes will shift over there if you are watching. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the social death of the future that you have built. And what I mean by that is, it's not just about like being single. It's about being the only one in your friendship group whose life has suddenly gone backwards. And my God, did this slap me in the face. But I think it slapped me in the face gradually. I don't think it was ever really, really loud to me. There were certain times in my life where I thought, bloody hell, that's loud. I talk about the story about one of my best friends getting engaged and me, unbeknown to me, being at an engagement party. And if I knew that was an engagement party at the time, there is no way that I would have gone. It was just such a nice surprise for her, but it was an incredibly difficult situation for me. And I was so up for staying all day because I just thought I was at a birthday party. And I did dip and I did leave because it was very, very hard for me to be in that sort of setting. And I don't think I've ever had a big fat like, oh my God, you are single, when being with my friends. My friends don't make me feel like that. My girlfriends are very much like, we're the type of friendship group that don't actually really do things as couples. I think we've done like a handful of things as couples, but we don't tend to do it. And I did have a thought the other day, and I thought, oh my God, how exciting. And I'm going to share it with you because I don't think you really think about this. But when you meet somebody new, yes, one day it will be exciting about thinking about meeting somebody new. But I had this thought the other day and I was like, oh my God, you get to know like a whole different friendship group. And like you get to become the girlfriend or the new girl that's being like brought into a friendship group. And I think that is so exciting. And that's something that I don't actually think about. It's like, okay, so, you know, you meet somebody and not only do you meet them, then you get introduced into the friends. And like, that fills me with excitement. It's like, oh, like, do you want to come and meet my friends? So exciting. Obviously meeting their family as well, but like, so exciting. Like, I love, and you guys will know this, like I love having loads of friends and having big groups of friends and being able to be like, hey, let's do this together and let's do that together. And I love being able to be like, I've got friends here, there and everywhere. But like, you get to meet a whole new different friend group. And I think that is just so exciting. But there was never like this big fat thing where I thought, oh my God, I'm single AF. And I don't really know what to do with this, which obviously I'm quite fortunate about. But I know that some people will think that. And I know from going through my DMs and talking to some people that like some people's friends aren't like that, and that you do feel like super, super single. And it's annoying because you stand there and you are being reminded that you have basically gone back to a life that you pretty much have already graduated from. And there's nothing more annoying than somebody being like, oh my God, honestly, when you get there, honestly, the amount of people that say to me, you just wait. And I think, you just wait for what? I've done the relationship thing. You just wait. Okay, yeah, fair, I've not had children, but like, I've done the relationship thing. So what are you trying to preach to me about? I've been there, done that. I've lived with a boy. You know, I've been engaged. Like, what are we preaching about here? I've had a relationship down for longer than a majority of the people that I know. So obviously that's going to change as like time goes on, as that they've been with their boyfriends, as like obviously time continues. But yeah, I think it's funny when people talk to you like, just because you've come out of a relationship doesn't mean you don't know how to be in a relationship. I found it quite patronizing, to be quite honest. But there is like an element of like the humiliation of being a single friend. And again, like I can't talk from the point of view that like it's happened again, because I've only ever been through one breakup in my whole entire life, and since then I've been single. I don't really know how it feels to do it again, but I know for a fact if I met somebody now and was with them for 5 years and then we split up, and then having to be the single friend again, like that would be super, super hard. And it's something that like I want to address, because it's something that like people don't talk about. You don't find people online talking about, I'm the single friend again. Like that must be really difficult to go through, because I want to talk to you in quite a lot of detail about this next point, because I was having a shower the other day and I obviously do not know what it feels like to go through a breakup when you are 18, when you're 20, when you're 25. I know what it feels like to go through a breakup at 30. Why are breakups at 30 treated so much differently to breakups at when you're like 20 and like 22? Why do people treat it so much differently? And it annoys me. And let me tell you why that is. It's time. If you go through a breakup at 22, there's no way that people would be stood there being like, oh my God, I can't imagine being you. My God, this would be my worst nightmare. Oh my God, like, you know, get on dating apps, do this, do that. They'd be like, you're 22. You got the rest of your life ahead of you. Like, what are you stressing for? Why don't people say that when you're 30? Because you still have got the rest of your life ahead of you. So why is that different? Why do people say to you, oh my God, like you're going through a breakup at 30? People don't say to that when you go through a breakup at like 23. And it should be the same. You still have your whole life ahead of you. But they are treated differently. Like if I went through what I went through at say 22, I don't think I would be feeling the pressure as much as I would be at 30. And that's wrong. It shouldn't be like that. And I know that women, obviously, children are factored into it, but it shouldn't be presumed that it's wrong. And there are so many more people talking better on the internet than I do about, you know, women not having children and not wanting to have children and choosing exclusively not to have children. And they articulate themselves a hell of a lot better than me, because I'm still on that balance beam of like, you know, do I want children, do I not? So I don't talk well about it, but I still think it's wrong and it shouldn't be a thing. And we should be able to turn around and say, would you give me that advice if I was 22? The same life event happens. A breakup's still a breakup. So if that life event happens at 22 or if it happens at 30, why does your advice differ? It shouldn't. It annoys me. And you can 100% come back to me on that if you do disagree. But I think it's wrong. It's horrible when you go through a breakup at 30 and you think, why am I being told different? I've still got my life ahead of me. Don't get me wrong, there were very, very minimal people that used to say it to me, but believe me, they knew when they had said something wrong to me because I'd call them out on it. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about around like the social death around your breakup is that you become that cautionary tale. And I am very conscious of talking about my breakup in front of people who have been in relationships for a very long time. And I became really aware of this last year when I went to a conference in London. And I was talking to a girl there and she had just got engaged. And I was like, oh my God. She was from where I was from and she was saying that she just wanted a small wedding. They couldn't find a venue. And I honestly just felt myself just word vomiting. I was like, oh my God, where I was going to get married is here and you should have a look at it. It's really nice. It's a small stately home, all the rest of it. And she was like, was? And I was like, oh my God. And from trying to help somebody, I realised that I could have also put the fear of God into this poor girl who had just told me that she got engaged. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, you should have a look at where I was supposed to get married. And then I heard what I said. And she was like, what happened? And I was like, didn't make it down the aisle. And she was like, oh, why? And I was thinking, stop asking why. And also, why couldn't I have just said, I know loads of places where people have got married. Why did it have to be about me? Honestly, it was the worst thing ever. But you become like this cautionary tale where everyone goes, oh my God, I do not want to be in the same situation as you. And also you feel like you can't have a certain conversation with people because you are worried that you are going to put the fear of God in people. Like, imagine meeting me and just being newly engaged and having been with your partner for like 4 years and being like, oh my God, like we've just got engaged, and me being like, oh yeah, you should really check out this wedding venue that I was supposed to get married at but never made it. You'd be like, right, so how long were you together? 14 years. And what happened? He just left, changed his mind. Horrible situation, but you can't, it's not bad on me. I did nothing wrong. I was trying to help her, but you feel conscious about telling your story to people who are in happy relationships when they say like, oh my God, like what happened? And you're like, well, the other social element, and one that I touch on and do a lot of work with people actually around this, is the fact that the embarrassment of, and I would come back to this when I'm talking about like your ex is moving on, but the embarrassment that you go through as being the girl or the guy that got left, because number one, people will always go to where they feel the most comfortable. There is very little people on this planet that actually speak on how they feel. And I know that I think there was only a couple of people that really not stood up to my ex, but kind of called him out and said like, what on earth are you doing? And then took my side. My situation made people feel uncomfortable because people couldn't see my ex being the person I was describing him as being. And the stuff that I was doing, people were like, no, surely not. And it was like when I was I felt like I had to prove myself. Felt like I had to show the evidence of like things being done. And then when I'd showed them, they were like, what the hell? There is that embarrassment of you being the girl that has been left. And it's horrible. You worry about it a lot. I talk about this more so from a dating perspective, because I think there's a huge difference in meeting somebody who has been left and then meeting somebody who had done the leaving. Like if I was sat across a table from somebody who said, I left my partner after 12, 13 years together because of X, Y, and Z, I would feel quite uncomfortable then continuing to date that person because they've got it in them that they can abandon somebody. And like my therapist said, that is something that is deep rooted into somebody and something that just doesn't change. You don't just meet somebody and think, I'm never going to leave that person. That's a personality trait that you have. That is something that is part of a deeper issue, and it would make me feel uncomfortable. However, if I was sat across the table of somebody who said, and I have been, to be fair, who said, my girlfriend just walked out on me and I don't really know why. The only thing I'd be cautious of is the length of time that they've spent by themselves. I wouldn't be worrying thinking, well, you must have done something wrong, because I know that I did nothing wrong, and I know that it was all on my ex, and it was my ex's reason for leaving was because of him, and it was his issue. It was nothing to do with me. So I think that's really difficult to get across when you're not in that dating environment, when it's like public and it's people, and you know, people say, God, did you hear so-and-so left so-and-so? And you think, well, they must have done something wrong. That's not the case at all. And I truly, honestly believe that it is one of the hardest things to navigate, because the embarrassment that comes from that is really, really quite loud. And in a breakup, automatically something has to be the problem, and people don't want to point the finger at people because people don't want to turn around and say you're the problem. I have no issue in turning around and telling people that they are a problem, and I don't know whether that's brutal, I don't know whether that can be seen as me being a bit nasty, but like, I genuinely think if somebody was to walk out on somebody else and not really be able to pinpoint why, they become the problem. And more and more as I go through kind of like, not healing, but as I go through moving through my life and meeting people and having conversations with people and, you know, getting their advice and stuff, I've realised more and more just how much I made myself the problem, which then really radiated out when I was in public, because it was kind of like, well, I did nothing wrong. I used to find myself saying all the time, like, I did nothing wrong, like I had to prove myself, and you don't. Like, if you were left and told the reason why you were left is because you deserve better, you are not the problem, they are. And like my therapist said, that then becomes a bigger problem, because then that person has to understand why they did that and how they were able to do that. And it takes a strong person to be able to walk into a therapy room and say, I have a problem. It's not like I've been left, I need some help. It's, I think I have an issue. And unfortunately, people just don't do that. And then it's sad because they go on to repeat the cycle and repeat the patterns. And it's horrible because then another person gets caught up in someone else's problems when, like I always say, I went to therapy because somebody else needed to go to therapy. That's the bottom line. I'm not worried about saying it. That is facts. That is true. Another social thing that annoys me about being single is the anger that goes through my veins. And if my friends are listening to this, or if my friends do get hold of this clip maybe, the anger that goes through my veins when they slate their partners. That is something that I really struggle with. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I'm like, yes, drag them. Like, they have done something really wrong. But when it's just petty stuff, I think, oh my God, like, you're talking to the wrong person. I didn't get this a lot because I enjoyed being single, but like, I know if somebody is listening to this who isn't enjoying being single and then being in a friendship group where all they do is slate their partners, annoying. And I say, like I said, I don't deal with this a lot, really at all, to be fair. Like, it's kind of just like classic, you know, when my friends go away and their partners have got the kids and they're ringing them, like saying like, what's their favourite snack? Like that sort of like funny stuff. But I have been in a couple of situations in the past where people have been quite nasty about their partners, and I've obviously been sat with them thinking, hold on a second, like, you've got it quite good here, and I don't think you should be. I really disagree with talking negatively about your partner in public, because I don't know, I just think there's one thing talking to a friend on the phone and being like, they're really doing my head in, or they've done this and I feel really upset by it. But it's another thing going out into public and slating your partner. I just think it's a little bit disrespectful. I just think it's disrespectful. It's something that I don't agree with. And I find that since being single, it angers me a lot more. I don't know whether you guys are the same, but it really annoys me. I think, like, well, give the poor boy a break. Like, he's doing his best. Obviously, like I said, there's that element of, like, sometimes, yeah, like, you need your friend to vent and say they're doing this again, and you be like, for God's sake. But there are instances where I've been like, you shouldn't be talking like that about your partner. That's really unfair. But then I think the resentment comes from the fact that, like, they sit in the pub and they're, like, going in on their partner. They still get to go home to them, and you're going home on your own. And like I said, I didn't really feel like that a lot throughout, like, my single kind of era, but I know that it would affect some people because it's been brought up in my DMs, and obviously I like to address stuff that people have spoken to me about in my inbox. I think with all of these, it's kind of like you do have to sit and ask yourself a question. Are these all things that you panic about or things that you experience because you have, like, a genuine fear of being alone? Or are you just worried about being left behind? And I guess, like, both of them can exist, but if it's about a genuine fear about being alone, unfortunately, as generic as this sounds, you are not going to be on your own forever. These things that you are feeling at the moment, or those things that I've listed, you aren't going to feel like that forever. And I think it's important to ask yourself these questions, because if it is the fear of being alone, you're not going to be on your own forever. If it's the fear of being left behind, then I go back to the fact that, like, you aren't being left behind. You aren't behind. And I had to remind myself of this a lot. I wasn't behind. I have a shed load of experience about being in a relationship. Some of my friends have never lived with a boy. Like, they have never lived with a boy. I'm sorry, but living together is one of the biggest things that you will go through as a couple. Actually living in the same house as each other was one of the hardest adjustments I think I went through in the entirety of my relationship. And I mean, we spent 6 months apart traveling. But I would say that moving in together was one of the most difficult parts of my relationship. You have to be able to juggle each other's lives. And luckily for him, my life was pretty normal and pretty not, like, out there. But his life was very busy, very stressful, very chaotic. And he had moved out of a house where, quite rightly, his mum had mothered him and looked after him and made sure that everything was done for him, and then moved in with me. And I was like, do you think this is going to be a thing? Because it's not. But then it was, because I actually really enjoyed it. But actually moving in together and the conversations was actually a lot harder than renovating an entire property together. I will say that. But going back to what I was saying, you aren't behind. You are just going through a chapter of your life that is teaching you that you deserve more, and that you are strong, and that you are on a different path. That does not mean you are behind, because you have a wealth of experience of being in a relationship. The second thing that I want to talk to you guys about is when you've had your old life handed back to you. This comes up in conversation all of the time. All of the time I get messages like, I'm having to go back to my old life. Obviously, with me, as we all know, I did not go back to my old life. I was 14 when I met my ex. I didn't go back to my 14-year-old life. I was 29, coming up to 30. My life was pretty much planned. The job, the house, everything. But what I can talk about from this perspective is the fact that you do kind of sit there and resent that life. You don't look at it as being experience, like I've just said. You've come away with a wealth of experience. If you aren't thinking like that, that is totally okay, because I didn't either. I initially thought of it as being a complete waste of time. I had very much dulled my life down. Not dulled it down, that's wrong. I'd very much put my life on the back burner to be a housewife. And it was done in a really nice way. There was not one part of my relationship where it was like, you need to stay at home, you need to do this, you need to do that. That's not why I did what I did. It just worked. They were the dynamics in my relationship. It just worked. However, coming out of my relationship, I realised just how much I didn't say. I know how much I didn't dream. I knew how much that like my ambition had kind of been dulled down, and that wasn't any criticism to my ex. My ex didn't go out and do that. We built his dream. His business fulfilled our dreams. So it just made sense. Do you know what I mean? It did make sense. Since coming out of my breakup, I've realised just how ambitious I actually am. And I'd forgotten. And I tell a story on my Patreon that like, I forget that I once was that student going into sixth form at school, you know, sitting my finals and saying, I want to go to law school. And every single teacher in that school went, yeah, right, no chance. To the point where they actually didn't even tell me when the law like open days were. And when I did my application to university, no one helped me. And this isn't like a poor me sob story, you know, like no one helped me. I didn't have the greatest track record at school. I was a sassy teenager. I was a nightmare. And so I do kind of understand where that came from, but I had no support. And it made me want it more. And I had forgotten that I was once that person. And I got into law school, I got into my first choice, and I actually got in on the interview. So I got in on, yes, my grades, but also my interview too. So I actually had my offer sent to me before I even had my grades. I've forgotten that I once had that big burning fire in my belly, because I had just adopted this new kind of way of life where I didn't need that big fat burning fire in my belly. I was just at home, and I was supportive, I was a supportive girlfriend, and that's just the role that I took on. And I think when that goes and your relationship goes, it's kind of like, well, all those years of me, you know, not following my dreams and chasing my goals and doing all of that, like, are they wasted? And it took me a long time to be able to turn that round and turn it into experience, because I now have the work ethic that makes me like I'm on Prozac every day of my life. Like my drive and determination, I don't think I've really sat down for the last year and a half. And my friends are like, you're crazy. And I'm like, I know. Like, people say to me like, how do you know it's going to work? And I'm like, because I'm insane. Like, I'm insane. I'm actually mad. You should hear what I say to myself in the shower. My affirmations are wild. My dream board is crazy. How I talk to my parents about what I'm doing in my future makes me sound literally crazy. But that wasn't there when I was in a relationship. It went. And now I've got it back. But initially, I didn't feel like that. It takes a lot of work to be able to realise that actually you're not going back to your old life. You are moving forward with lessons. You will never catch me describing myself ever again as a housewife. Ever again. Until my wedding. I don't marry that DJ. You know? Until that point. It's never going to happen ever again. I have learned my lesson big time on that. My life is more fulfilling doing what I'm doing and being ambitious. And like I keep saying, it took me a long time to learn that, but you will learn that too. I think just on that as well, like having your old life handed back, some of your goals were goals that you built as a couple. And that's hard as well, because being able to actually detach from those goals is really hard. And it's kind of like, hold on a second, is this my goal? Or is this a goal that I had when I was in a relationship? And I think that can be spoken about in small terms, like, okay, we really want to own a camper and go travelling with our children. And they can be really big, like, okay, we want children, like that's a big goal. And when that gets taken away from you, it's really hard. And it's something that people don't talk about. You think that your dreams and your goals are dead set on, like, you confuse your dreams and your goals with your relationship dreams and goals. And then when you think about, hold on a second, I'm not going to be able to achieve that because I'm not in a relationship anymore, then you're down again. and you realize that this dream that you might have been working towards for years and years and years is never going to transpire into reality. And it's hard, and people don't talk about it, and I don't understand why people don't talk about these things. And on that, there is also that uncomfortable feeling of not wanting your old life back, but not wanting this one as well. And this will hit you when you start healing, or when you start realizing that stuff was happening that you couldn't see. This happened to me. I was really grieving, and then all of a sudden information started churning out, and I was like, okay, I'm really angry now. I'm really angry. I don't ever want to be in that relationship ever again, knowing what I know now. However, I also don't want this life. I don't want to be single. I don't want to be single. I don't want to have to be independent. I don't want to have to be an independent woman. I do not want any of this life. But over my dead body, am I ever going to go back to that life? And again, it is something that people do not talk about, that you are in this limbo period, not really knowing what you actually want. And it's terrifying, because that realization is like, okay, well, I don't want that, but I definitely don't want this. What am I doing? And again, this is what people do not realize when they are going through a breakup and when they're healing from a breakup, is that this is the part of healing that is really hard. It's really hard, because you don't want your old life back. And when someone leaves you, you can't have your old life back, because they're not coming back. They've left you. Brutal, but facts. But also, this new life is scary. However, you don't know this life. And I said to somebody the other day in a conversation, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to grieve my single life, probably forever. I'm going to grieve this chapter of my life where I do not have any responsibilities, anyone to answer to, anyone to say no to, anyone to say yes to. No one is stopping me from doing anything that I want to do. That is terrifying. I am completely unsupervised as an adult. And I used to think that I was quite sensible, but sometimes some of the decisions I make, I'm like, what the hell? I will grieve this life probably more than I did my relationship, because I'm going to go back into a life that I know that I absolutely love, because I love being in love. I love being in a relationship, but I also really love being single. So I'm probably going to go through a grieving period of this life as well. But you get stuck into like, I don't want my old life back, but I definitely don't want to do this. And that's when your real healing starts, because you know that you can't go back. You have to go forward. One of the guys I used to work with once said to me, time always goes forward, Lou. Time never goes back. You never ever go back. You have to start putting one foot in front of the other, because time is just going forward. That is really difficult. It's really hard. But it's something that, again, people just don't talk about. And the whole point to my presence online and my podcasts and my posts and everything is to validate how you're feeling. So I hope you're nodding along to this episode thinking, yeah, I actually totally get that. She gets me. And I think that also feeds into, and I don't want to talk about this a lot because I do talk about it a lot, but it feeds into that whole finding yourself. How on earth are you supposed to find yourself when you actually do not know how to exist as a single person? My identity crisis was huge. I had a huge identity crisis, and I was listening to a podcast the other day with Chris Appleton, and he said the amount of women that he met that had gone through divorces or huge breakups that would then change their entire identity through changing their hair was huge in his whole career. If you don't know, Chris Appleton is a celebrity hairdresser, but he would say that these women would come in and, you know, they would be heartbroken and they would say, cut all my hair off or dye my hair blonde. Like, I loved my blonde era, but I definitely was blonde blind. You do not have a clue who you are. And I talk about this a lot more on my Patreon. A lot more identity chat goes on over on my Patreon. But it's one of those things that, like, you know, oh yeah, just go and find yourself. Where am I looking? Where are you telling me to look to find myself? Because I don't know. Because I can't find myself, and I don't want to find myself. And this part of me is actually terrifying. It's terrifying. And the last thing that I want to talk about, and I only want to talk about on this ever so slightly, because like I always say, I want to validate how you feel, and I want to know that like people are talking about how you feel out there, and even if it's just me that's talking about it. But there is an element in being single that your ex definitely plays a part in. And if you listen to my podcasts on Patreon, you know that I have addressed it on numerous occasions surrounding numerous things around the fact that it is very, very hard to see your ex continue with not only their life, but also bring somebody in and then continue with the life that you have had to grieve. And there is no easy way. In fact, there is no solution to this. I could tell you everything that I did to have to deal with this, but there is not one easy way. And this is one of the parts of a breakup that I do wish that I could formulate something that would just get you through that. You know, like a tablet that you could take, because it's one of those things that one isn't spoken about widely, because people don't want to address that they are sad when they see their ex moving forward with their lives, because there is a social sort of element that it is embarrassing. So I'm going to address it, because I don't think it's embarrassing. I don't think it's spoken about enough, and I think people need to know that it is normal to feel how they're feeling, and watching your ex move forward with their lives and live out a life that you were promised is really hard. There is definitely a specific pain that you go through feeling like your ex has took a future that they promised with you and then given it to somebody else. And this kind of did happen quite quickly with me, but didn't happen quite quickly with me. My ex got into a relationship really quickly, and the more I kind of heard about it, the more I kind of thought, well, you know, he's got into a relationship quite quickly, so that kind of made a lot of the stuff that he said when he broke up with me just lies. So it was like quite hard for me to deal with that. But equally as well, it moved quite quickly. So I was exposed to quite a lot that absolutely broke me into 1,000 pieces very soon after he left. So I think the fact that I was exposed to a lot has now meant that like now his life's moving on in a certain way, I'm more not like capable to deal with it, but it doesn't affect me as much. And I would say that is probably like 10% of it. The 90% of it is because I've done the work that I needed to do, and I understand that I would never go back to that life, like I was saying. But I genuinely think that like their new relationship feels like a personal verdict, that like you weren't good enough, and that they've just given their entire like future that they planned with you to them. And I obviously talk about this on my Patreon, because it was like watching my life. It was really weird, because like I would get sent things and it was like looking at my life, but it wasn't me in the photo, it was a new girl. It was very strange, and it feels like a personal attack, like I said. But the specific pain of seeing your ex with somebody new, unless you are going to live with them 24/7, you cannot make any form of formal judgment on what their relationship is like, because you don't know. You are only seeing what social media is telling you. And I think this is where a big part of like me wanting to be like the most private person in the world these days, I went from being like the social media poster of like posting absolutely everything. I would post like a carousel of like what we'd done at the weekend with the house emoji, the heart emoji, the infinity emoji, like the holding hands emoji, and like we booked our wedding venue, and I did a whole post about it on Instagram, and it was like, we've booked our wedding venue, you know, church emoji, love heart emoji, you know, all the emojis that were to do with relationships. Like that was me, that was how I used to post. I was a big fat social media poster. And like I always say, it was because I was proud of my life. But it makes me want to be like, oh my God, I don't want anyone to have access over my life, because I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing, because this life, what I've created, I have had to work so incredibly hard to get to a point where I am comfortable, and that, you know, people are actually saying to me, God, you are actually living your best life, aren't you? They're not saying, you will find someone, or you wait till it happens to you. That no one says that to me. Everyone just says like, from what we see, it looks like you're having the best time. And like, I post prolifically in group chats. Everyone knows, all of my close friends know what I'm up to. I just don't post on social media anymore. And I do think that comes from a place of my ex and his new partner doing the complete opposite. And I don't mind saying that. It is genuinely, that's where it's come from. I don't want people to have any form of opinion over what I'm doing and how I'm living my life just because it isn't the same as my ex's. And people are opinionated when you go through a breakup, like massively opinionated. And they will tell you their opinion without you even asking. And sometimes you just don't want to hear it. But I very quickly became very aware and also really sick of the virtual scorecard that people were kind of having with me and my ex. And I think it's unfair, and I speak to a lot of people that have the same thing, and they say, like, people will go like, oh, have you seen that he's done this, or have you seen that she's done that, like, what have you been up to, what have you been doing? I just think you just don't need it in your life when you're already going through a lot. You just don't need that added pressure of having to post on social media just to prove that you're okay. You can be okay behind closed doors and no one has to know what you're doing. Trust me, I am that person. And like I always say, and like I say on my Patreon a lot, like, I love the fact that people are like, where are you? What are you doing? Like, being mysterious is great. What isn't great is when you date and they go, you've not posted on your social media for a year. What do you look like? And you go, yeah, like, these are the most recent photos. That was funny because I remember meeting somebody that I'd gone on a date with, and he was like, you last posted in like August 2024. And I was like, yeah, no, I need to send you an updated photo, don't I? And he was like, why don't you post on social media? And people do compare your life to your ex's life 24/7. It is so annoying, but you do not have to rise to it. You can be 10 times happier than people think you are and not post about it online. And this is why sometimes I hate social media, and social media is rubbish, because you create a fantasy in your head that their life is perfect and they've got everything that they want and yours is ruined. And it's not the case. So many factors go into so many big life decisions that, again, like I said, unless you live with your ex, you don't know what's gone into that decision and you can't form an opinion on that. And it is hard when you're getting 1,000 screenshots sent to you in one go of like, oh my God, have you seen this? And it's hard to break out of that mindset of like, oh my God, they've changed. You don't know that. You literally don't know that. And if you're struggling with that, I talk really openly on my Patreon, and I give you a big fat talking to on topics like this. And what I think is not massively spoken about online, because people are worried about, you know, hurting the viewer or listener's feelings, is that sometimes they do build a life that looked exactly like the one that you were going to build. Sometimes they do get married. Sometimes they do have children, because at the end of the day, everyone's life is going to go into that direction at some point. Like, if that's the life that you wanted, then your life is going to go that way at some point. You are going to find somebody, you are going to get married. If you want children, you're going to have children. You are going to probably move out, go on the holidays and all the rest of it. If that is the life that you wanted, your life is going to go in that direction as well. It's just not there yet, because you have been through a lot and you are dealing with a lot, and you are trying your hardest to heal from an extremely traumatic event. And I think there is a lot of people out that are quite cynical about your ex moving on. You don't have to be. You just have to know if that's the way that you want your life to go, then you will get that. You don't have to constantly drag your ex. You don't have to say, oh, well, you know, I've been there, it's going to happen to them too. You know, I spoke to a guy the other week and he was like, you've really changed my perspective on the fact that I was being really negative about my ex being in a new relationship. All I will say is, you cannot predict someone else's future. You can't even predict your own. We are all in the same boat here. And if you are listening to this, you are probably listening to this because you are going through something that you could not have predicted. So the fact that, yes, your ex's life looks like it's moving on and looks like a lot like the life that you planned, you have got to be confident in knowing that you will have that too, if you want it. Now, I'm going to speak from perspective of the fact that, like, right now that part of my future that eventually I will have is not anywhere in my future in the next 3-4 years. I live an incredibly different life to how I planned it from looking, and I could not have predicted to live this life how I'm living right now. And that backs up my point in the fact that I could not have predicted this. I could not have predicted my life looking like this 2 years ago, let alone 4 years ago when I was going through my huge breakup. Like, life has a incredibly strange way of teaching you what you should be doing and what path you should be going down. And even now when doors close, I think, oh my God, not again. And then something comes along and I think, oh, that's why that happened. It's so weird, but you honestly get so aligned with what is right for you that, yes, still hearing about your ex 4 years on and what they're doing, it still might upset you, or still you might think, oh God, like that's a little bit painful. But then you remember that this precious life that you have rebuilt on your own, you are having the best time. Then that will come in the future. It's just not coming for you now because you have this great life to live, you know? Anyway, I hope that episode helped. I hope I've validated some of your feelings. Like I always say, like my episodes go from like validating how you feel, or they might be like really, really advice heavy, or I might be talking about a really heavy topic. I always want to make sure that you go away feeling a little bit more positive about what you're currently going through. Like I always say, guys, there are more episodes over on my Patreon. I think I had 30 people sign up to my Patreon last week, which was bizarre because I don't actually know where that's come from. I've got so many good relationships going on over there. I reply to DMs every 2 days over there. Very, very active on there. I've also started a group on Instagram. So if you aren't a part of that group, then go over to my... Sorry, it's not a group, it's called a channel. Go over to my Instagram profile, it's at the bottom, it's called The Rebuild Club. You can't actually message me on there, but I will be posting live episodes, like the launch of things, my thoughts, feelings, book recommendations, all the rest of it, podcast recommendations. That will go over onto my channel. And if you want the link to sign up to my mailing list, let me know. I am going to be sending out weekly emails on a Monday and on a Friday, and they'll just be little emails that can land in your inbox, a little bit like some love letters from Lou, maybe I'll call them, not sure yet, but yeah, that's all going on as well. So if you want to be a part of any of that, drop me a DM and I will send you all the links to all the information. If not, guys, have yourself a glorious weekend. Bye.